Welcome to Worlds Collide, a wrestling card podcast for wrestling fans by wrestling fans, featuring Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com.
This is like a stock market.
And Zhan Morning from Wrestling with Cards on YouTube. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, I'm just posing the question. Join them as they navigate the world of wrestling cards, helping you build a bigger and better collection and making some money along the way. What's up, wrestling fans? Worlds Collide back again for another roundtable. Everybody loves these roundtable episodes. Tony, how you doing?
Doing great, man. How about you?
Fantastic. Even better now that we've got two guests that, we were talking about one of these guys being legendary, even more legendary than us. And he disagreed with us and said we were legendary. And now we're having a legendary debate. But we're going to make him wait for one moment. Turn it over to our first guest. Houston, what's up?
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Doing great. Thanks for coming on the show, and let everybody know real quick who you are and what you do.
My name is Houston. I started the Chasin the Graph, Facebook and Twitter about 2 years ago. Just an idea I had. Wanted to show off my collection and, maybe help people get into collecting autographs that wanted to. And it's transpired into way more than that. And here recently, been doing a lot of wrestling card and independent wrestling interviews, so it's really going in a good direction.
Yeah, that's where I first started picking up your stuff, was interviewing the indie guys, and it's always interesting to get their perspective of things. So I love what you're doing, love the content. The more wrestling card content we can have, the better. That's it's the only way we're going to grow the hobby. Speaking of that, the other legendary guy we've been talking about, somebody who has a platform that isn't afraid to talk about wrestling cards, sports card therapist Rob Girard. What's up?
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you very much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I'm a big fan of the Worlds Collide podcast, so thank you.
Go ahead and let everybody know about the Sports Card Therapist podcast, what you do, and how long you've been in wrestling cards. Just real quick.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Rob Girard. I'm a licensed therapist by day trade, so that's my day job. So last year I started up the podcast Sports Card Therapist because it's just really links my two passions together, which are sports cards and my work that I do with kind of helping others. So yeah, that's about it. The podcast has been going great. I've been able to meet some incredible people like you guys. Been into wrestling and wrestling cards ever since I could remember. I could remember as early as I can remember at 4 or 5 years old being going to see the live events, Hulk Hogan, Honky Tonk Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, that mid 80s stuff.
That golden era.
Yeah, definitely.
All you youngins, all you youngins, I tell you.
I'm based out of Connecticut. So, I half hour to Stanford to the WWF, now WWE headquarters. So it's pretty cool.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into these questions. As always, we turn it over to the guests first. Everybody listening, you know the drill. Somebody asks a question, we make it around the table, and then we just keep it going, have a great discussion. And hopefully, whatever we're talking about today is going to help you guys learn something, maybe steer a different direction the way you collect, buy, sell, anything. So, Houston, you're up first.
All right, sweet. Yeah, my question kind of, is a personal one that I had because I've only been into wrestling cards for 3, maybe 4 months now, so I still have a long road ahead. A
newbie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I see a lot of debate among certain things, and my one question is if you could give just one piece of advice to a person who is thinking about making that switch from sports cards to wrestling cards, wholeheartedly or just part-time, what would that one advice be?
WrestlingTradingCards.com.
I can roll with that.
Actually, yeah, education. Tony, do you want to start off with that?
Yeah, educate. That's my number one thing, always has been for me as a wrestling card collector, having collected wrestling cards now for well over 30 years. I just say that it's always important to do your homework, especially today's day and age with technology. Now we have a lot of fake stuff out there. We have a lot of unlicensed type stuff out there. It's just, you stumble across something, it's important to go out there and find out, what did I just get in my hands? do I have something great? Do I have something not so good? What's going on? And so that's kind of what the foundation of WTC was always about, was to educate myself, because I had no information out there to get it. So I was gathering and archiving this information myself, but also to educate others of like, hey, look what I found from Germany. Hey, look what I found from, Canada. And just start archiving that. And I'm still learning that stuff today. I mean, every day that I'm updating, I'm adding new things like, I didn't know this 20 years ago. I didn't know this 5 years ago. And it just helps the hobby as a whole. So education, education, education. Do your homework.
Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think great question. I think when it comes to cards for me, whether if it's sports cards or I link wrestling cards in with sports cards, right?
Sure.
Wrestling's a sport to me. So when it comes to any kind of cards, I always like to go with the GOATs. I know that for me, GOATs at least are a safe investment. I know that my money is at least probably safe there. And when it comes to the GOATs, those are usually my favorite. So if the floor fell out from under me, chances are I wouldn't lose, or I wouldn't mind if I lost money. So, I know when I first started, especially really going into wrestling cards, I started with, the small things. Like I started with like the Hogan 85, and then
small things, Hogan 85, small things. Oh, Jesus.
Well, I mean, you could get it raw on eBay for $40, right? So
yeah, that's true. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So then I'm like, okay, let me grab the yellow. Let me grab card number 1. That's great. Then before you know it, I'm jumping up to this. So I'm jumping up to 82 Wrestling All-Stars. Then before you know it, I'm jumping up to these. And I'm like, oh, now I need these. Now I need, so I'm jumping up to, and yes, I'm trying to flex a little bit. I'm sorry.
By all means.
It's all good.
but
I don't have my cards to flex anymore. So,
so, I go from getting the mainstream stuff to maybe the more high-end stuff to now the more obscure stuff. So the more I learned the market, that's when I decided to jump in. And one thing that I think, I try not to give advice either in my life or in the hobby. I try not to give advice. I just give my experience. My experience has been, I never try to purchase a card that I can't afford. If something is above my budget, I don't do that, because I never want to have to play catch up. Don't get me wrong. I move money around all day when it comes to cards, but I try not to ever live beyond my means when it comes to cards, because I don't want the hobby to leave a bad taste in my mouth. And I don't want my wife to be on me about the hobby. You know what I mean?
The real reason. There we go. So.
Yep.
The one thing I would start with, and it's probably contradicting to what many like hobby talking heads want to tell you, not so much in wrestling. We've been doing this forever, but outside of wrestling, collect what you like, collect what you love is not really the thing. It's, collect what's going to make you money, or buy what's going to 10x in X amount of years. The thing with the wrestling, it's kind of, Rob, it's kind of like what you said, like you collect the GOATs because if the floor falls out, you don't care because you like them. And that's kind of what I would have to say to anybody that's getting into wrestling cards is start with whatever you like the most. And what I mean by that is, what are you tied to? What are you connected to? Is it a certain talent? Is it an organization? We've got guys out there that are going nuts for these indie cards right now. Me and Tony have talked, actually, the episode dropped today about indie cards, and like we're both interested in them, but we don't really collect them because it's not really our thing. I think we're probably more on the same page as Rob as far as like high-end GOATs, rare
stuff comes in my lap every once in a while, but I mean,
yeah, same. Yeah, so you get stuff in trades or a deal you can't pass up. But when there's two things that actually, let's say 3 things that I like in wrestling. I like the GOATs, so that could be rookie cards, autographs, shiny stuff, whatever. I just, I love, who doesn't love Hogan, Flair, The Rock, Austin, those guys, most people love them. The other thing that I like is the All-Stars, because it's just such a unique set. And there's so many talents that are from WWF, from Memphis, from World Class, from AWA, from Portland Wrestling, from NWA Georgia, like all that stuff. It's one of the few times where wrestling organizations are all in the same set. Like that just never really happened again. So that's a cool thing. And then of course, Killer Cross, Karrion Kross. I was like, I need something that's modern to connect to. And what started out as what I wanted to do like a test for prospecting for wrestling, which ended up not working out. But before it didn't work out, I just found myself immersed in the act of collecting this guy. And it's been the most fun I've ever had in the hobby. It's costs a whole lot less. And it's one of those things where like I'm pretty much at this point like the number one collector of his cards. So it's something that's fun. It doesn't cost that much. And it's something I could do on the side when, I'm waiting for PSA to open to dump cards into there or something. It's an extra fun thing. So I think a lot of people maybe, I'm seeing it with AEW. They want to come into AEW and they're like, I like MJF or I like Cody or whoever they're going after, and they want their cards. And I think that's a good place to start. Go after who you like, no matter what set it's in, no matter how much it costs. If it's a dollar card, cool. If you want to super collect somebody, that's a great way to, Tony, you can vouch for that. And I just think that's where you need to start where you like. And then you can always veer off from there. I started a Road Warriors PC and I've kind of,
did you really?
Yeah, I've kind of sold some stuff of it off though. Like I kept the big stuff that I wanted and then kind of moved the rest of it because I was like, you know what? The All-Stars are really hitting me more. I need to get those signed. I need to get those graded. So I'm going to take the money that I was starting with Road Warriors and move it over to here. So it's, your collection's always going to evolve. But if you start by trying to chase the money first and foremost, it's not going to end up very well at all.
Yeah, when I first met you, it was all about Road Warriors. That's when I first met you. So that was your main PC was
That's
Road
where it
Warriors.
started. Yep.
And over the last how long we've known each other now, about a year plus now, it's been it's evolved,
Yep.
And because of your carrying, killing, cross, whatever you want to call them, that got me into doing like, you know what, I'm going to start something, connect with somebody new now too. So I'm going to do Dexter Loomis like that, just for the hell of it. Like I've never watched the guy wrestle in my life, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and start collecting because it's fun, and I'm having fun collecting it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's very low cost. It's not a big star. So just if something were to happen, like, okay, well, I'm out a few bucks, but I enjoyed the process.
Right. Rob, you can go next.
Yeah. So great way to kick it off, Houston. Definitely. Great question, man. I think my question, and this is something I really, for collectors, it might be a little bit taboo, and I'm a collector first. I don't look at cards as much of an investment. I'm a collector first, but I think my question is, aside from the GOATs, so aside from, Hogan, Rock, Flair, Austin, Cena, which 80s to 2000s mainstream wrestler, do you guys think would probably be a decent investment? So a guy that has some long-term collectability. So not only performance in the ring, but also that super likable factor.
Well, you didn't mention his name, so can I throw out Bret Hart?
Yeah.
Bret Hart would be a good one. I'd either pick Bret Hart, or I might even go with maybe even a Triple H. And I think one that nobody really talks about, and I think they should be talking about more, especially for his age, Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that one of one that sold that was it Drake's PC that ended up picking that up?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I mean, I feel like everyone in the wrestling card community was watching that auction. Yep. Did it go for $7,000? Was it?
No, 9,300.
Yeah, it was just shy of 10 grand.
Yeah.
It's the highest selling public ungraded wrestling card in history.
And when you think about, truly, now, I don't want to put him on too much of a platform, but Vince McMahon is so iconic. He's iconic almost in the kind of way that, beyond Dana White, but like almost in a way that like a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk is, right?
Sure.
I've always said he's the Walt Disney of pro wrestling. I've said that
there
forever.
You go.
Yeah. I think that's a very good way to put it, because people that may have never even watched wrestling before, they know who Vince McMahon is.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Like he would be probably my number one guy from that era you just outlined, 80s for 2000s like that. But Vince is Vince. That's people. I don't think it gets talked about enough. And I think maybe that raw card selling for almost 10 grand is probably a wake up call to a lot of wrestling card collectors. Like hey, maybe I should be looking at some Vince McMahon stuff if I wanted to start investing, because I still think he's relatively cheap across the board.
Well, he doesn't have really many autos out at all, right?
No,
Doesn't
I
have
mean,
a lot of
doesn't
anything.
have a lot of
Yeah.
anything. I mean, he has base cards, but there's no memorabilia type stuff. He has very few autographs. I mean, I've got an old Raw deal card that when I met him, I had him sign it for me. That was about it. But
Wow.
I just, there's not a whole lot of stuff out there that you can go out there and collect for him. And it's all still, even though it's less, it still doesn't cost you anything hardly. I mean, not all of his cards are 10 grand. I mean,
Right.
that's a high-end stuff.
Tony, you're the encyclopedia. What was the first pack pulled? Did you know off the top of your head what was the first pack pullable Vince McMahon card?
Pack pullable Vince McMahon trading card, period.
Yeah, because
Probably
he wasn't in 85, right?
No, he wasn't in the 85 set. I mean, he's in a, there's not a Vince McMahon himself card. It's a Vince McMahon with Hulk Hogan card that I think is from the
86 OPG.
86 OPG, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pack pullable card. But if you want to talk about more mainstream, you're looking at 98 classic superstars, probably. I mean, 98 superstars.
And then you can start getting really weird with like right around that same time frame, action figure cards, the Cardinal trivia game card. Like you start, and that's something that's wrestling's got that most other collectibles don't have, is the oddball food releases, game releases. Like it's just so it's.
If you're looking at pack pull though, pack pull is going to be 98 comic images superstars. Or you go to that OPG card set too. I mean, obviously it came from a pack. So,
wow. So I mean, I love those answers. And Bret Hart, doesn't he seem to always kind of find a way to keep his name on the tips of our tongues, whether if it's with like bashing Hulk Hogan, or if it's like just with these interviews? There's something so incredible. I mean, he was incredible in the ring, right? One of the best ring performers of all time.
100%.
But there was something just very cool, like Fonzie like about him, but also kind of mysterious.
Yeah.
I don't know. His interviews of the last decade plus just seem to, like, I don't know, people like to call him a whiner. He's such a purist of the industry. It's like I see both sides like that, but he's a legend, and I think it's somebody that, you look at his cards, they get some decent value, especially that 87 tops get some decent value.
Oh yeah.
It's already condition sensitive type of release, so it's going to be really hard to find something from him that's going to be in a high grade. But it's Bret Hart. I mean, as these guys get older and unfortunately start to pass away, I think you're going to start seeing some more, like everything else in life. Like now, it's like, oh my God, Michael Jackson, he passed away. I got to get all this stuff now. I mean, everything goes in value, kind of thing, And I think that's where it's going to take. On the flip side, I'm a guy who thinks that like guys like Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect don't get the love they deserve either. So
you're probably right about that.
Houston, do you want to give your thoughts I just thought of something I want to wrap up and explain, but I'll let you go ahead and go first.
The first name that came to my mind was I know he's passed away, but that would be Eddie Guerrero. And I know he doesn't have a lot of stuff out there, but I see a ton of desire for anything of his from the WCW Nitro sets and stuff like that. And I think he's just an absolute legend from one end to the other, pretty much all spectrums. And I think he was just a huge part of that era.
Agreed.
And Eddie Guerrero had some incredible like marathon matches, didn't he? Like over an hour.
And just his battles with Rey Mysterio, and then when he transferred over to WWF and eventually became the world champion, which you went from a smaller cruiserweight to them being the world champion. And then people are going back and getting his 95 BBM when he was like Black Tiger or something like that. Is that his rookie card? Is it not? Like here we go again with that debate, but.
And you have a talent that has, like in today's age, when you have a lot of talent signing DARR, he has a beautiful signature. So when you can find something like that, it's just this beautiful signature.
As an autograph collector, seeing his like WCW Nitro autos and stuff like that, I just sit there and stare at them sometimes, because the penmanship and the care that went into it, it just makes it 10 times better to me.
Right. And on a lazy day for an Eddie Guerrero autograph is just Eddie Guerrero. on a nice day, I'm also, it's Eddie Guerrero, say like Latino Heat below it or something like that, you know?
Cool inscription.
And,
As you guys were
before you wrap it up, Zhan, I'm sorry, I just want to jump in and just to piggyback off the Bret the Hitman Hart. I mean, and he's obviously forever linked with the Montreal Screwjob. So
Sure.
I think having with Shawn Michaels. So I think, that being said, and for everything that we said, is 87 rookie cards seeming to like gain some traction over the last year or so. With him with the interviews, with the Montreal Screwjob, with him just being an incredible in the ring performer. I think Tony bring up a great point with him maybe being one of those top guys that most just don't talk about.
Not to mention, look at the card. Look at like when someone sees the 86 Fleer Jordan, they know what it is. The design, the image.
Oh yeah.
And in my opinion, that's what this Bret Hart card is. I think it's a great image. It's a snapshot in time of the, heyday of 80s wrestling. It's got the red, white, and blue border. You can't beat that.
It's
and then
amazing.
The sticker is even cooler because it's just the solid red with all those little WWF backgrounds, little logos in the back. I love it. So that's actually one thing I was going to mention, but what I wanted to wrap up with, and I'll try not to be too long-winded here, but it's just this weird thing I was thinking of as you guys were talking. Earlier, I was watching a couple episodes of Ruthless Aggression. I don't know if you guys watched that or not, on the Peacock or WWE Network, but it's basically like the documentary of the Ruthless Aggression era after the Attitude Era. What was WWF going to do? Because all of their stars were kind of gone. And I think that's kind of where we're at with wrestling cards. Here's what I mean. We know Hogan, we know The Rock, and we know Vince and some of these other ancillary pieces. But why has Steve Austin, one of the biggest stars in wrestling history, not just gone crazy and overjumped some of these? What about Shawn Michaels? You guys mentioned Bret Hart. We mentioned Vince. Like we're at this point, Undertaker, Macho Man. Like we're at this point where there's like so many of these names that aren't really going above one another, like what we see in sports or like what we see in Pokemon, where certain Pokemon are, more sought after than another. So I don't know if there's, maybe it's one of those things where everybody likes so many wrestlers that one can't get ahead of another one in popularity as far as the cards go. But, everybody wants to talk about Macho Man, but it seems like people like his 94 Action Packed auto, but not so many people talk about his rookie, where it's just the opposite with like Bret Hart, where people talk about that 87 tops, but they don't talk about some of his autographed stuff, even in the WCW. It's just an interesting kind of space we're in. All the names that we mentioned could go above, or to the same level of Hogan and Rock and all those guys. It's just, who's it going to be? And that, I don't know. It could literally be all of those guys.
Well, and I think just like with any sport, like when you look at the NFL over the last 20 years, Peyton Manning being one of the greatest all-time quarterbacks, right? It's like, well, how aren't his prices through the roof or even a little bit higher? It's like, well, because he's playing in Tom Brady's shadow. And why isn't the Macho Man just more collectible? Well, he was playing in Hulk Hogan's shadow, and you start looking at all these giants like Cena, The Rock, and you're saying Stone Cold. Stone Cold did have to, he kind of was in The Rock's shadow as much as they were like, equals at times, right? At many times they seem like, I think The Rock has just completely, just grown in stature and legend since then, whereas Stone Cold hasn't as much. And The Rock is just that much more collectible, I think, if we're talking about an investment standpoint.
Right. And another thing, actually, good point you brought up. What's going to appeal to the masses, not the wrestling fans? We can talk about Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Rick Rude was mentioned. I'll just throw the Road Warriors out there, whatever. Like us as wrestling fans, we can
He's pumping them. He's pumping them.
Well, think about it. They're like the most dominating tag team, but no one talks about them. And the reason being is because Hogan, Rock, Flair, they're pop culture. Road Warriors are not pop culture. Rick Rude, unfortunately, not pop culture, even though like his airbrush tights, I think, should be pop culture.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah,
custom tights.
They kind of remind me of Tony's shirt right now, except.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I wore it special for tonight, so.
But it's really tough to pick. Did we mention Andre? Like, I think he's already at that GOAT level, right? I mean,
yeah.
Well, so he's off the list. You can't pick him right now. So
if there you go.
There you go.
I think you got to look, if you're looking for that next thing, it's got to be somebody who's going to like transcend into pop culture. And like, who is it? Steve Austin, like he's been in movies and I still can't understand why, but maybe it's Macho Man. Like he did Slim Jim. He's wrestled in every major company. Like it's very, very tough, but it's going to have to be somebody, Rob, like you said, somebody that everybody recognizes like The Rock. And there's only a few of those guys, despite a lot of the names we mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see
from that era though, too. So if we bring it forward now to today's market and today's talent side, is there somebody from today's talent and pool that could possibly be that level? I'd have to say maybe a Roman Reigns, possibly. I mean, he has the potential to maybe cross over into some TV movie type stuff. It's getting in and out, it's getting out of that wrestling stigma a little bit, which is, as you know, Zhan, I work with Kurt Angle. So, right. and knowing that he goes out and tries to audition for movie parts and TV parts, it's difficult because, he has a stigma about him. He's a professional wrestler. And that just, it seems to hurt some of these guys. So it's a huge hurdle to get over. So when a guy like The Rock does it, I mean, name other guys who've done it, who've gotten over that hurdle of becoming in the mainstream pop culture. There's not many.
Hogan and Flair. That's it. That's all I can think of.
And Flair is not even on that level with pop culture because of movies and TVs like a Rock is. He's just there because of the work he's embodied in wrestling, has transcended from that.
He has a huge following in hip hop.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's why.
That's where it is. Yeah, he is.
And Hogan is Hogan. He's like, you can't say like everybody knows who Babe Ruth is. Everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. And that's what he is to wrestling.
Correct. Yep.
And along those same lines, transcending into pop culture for wrestlers, like you were saying, they have a stigma about them, and they may have, had a really like aggressive heel character or something like that. But in today's, like where we're at today, is a lot of people dislike Cody Rhodes and have started disliking him because of his Rhodes to the Top show that comes on TNT. And in the last probably 3 to 4 months, he can't do anything in the world without getting booed. I mean, he could save a baby from a fire and he would still get booed. And when you see, people on social media talking, a lot of that is because of his Rhodes to the Top show. So I could see where it could, possibly maybe hurt instead of help. But
isn't that like even getting any heat? Isn't that still, you're still getting attention? So I mean,
Definitely.
attention still you're still, whether you're hated or you're liked. I mean, if you're hated that much, you must be doing something right.
How many people hate Tom Brady and look at the price of his cards?
Exactly.
I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's wow.
I mean, it's different when you go from there's Tom Brady and there's like people who despise him for whatever reason they do, but then you have a Michael Vick, and that's totally completely different. It's like that.
Yeah.
So people despise him for something completely different. So, I mean, there's some certain guys in the industry, let's put it this way, like a Hogan, a Flair, they're bulletproof. Okay, these are made men kind of type of thing. Do we condone their actions sometimes, of the things that you say? Absolutely not. I don't condone those actions. I don't condone the words that they say. But they've kind of proven themselves like, oh my God, that Dark Side of the Ring episode came out. Now Flair's going to be like, he's going to get the tank. Did nothing to his overall value.
His prices went up on his cards. I was following it.
I think I watched that 4 times. I think it was so good.
There's just certain guys that are like that. Now, if something were to happen, does that mean that maybe Bret Hart doesn't get the love that he should be getting in the hobby because he's so outspoken about how he feels about certain people, certain eras, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not. Is he not that much of a made man compared to the other guys? I don't know.
Before we turn it over to you for your question, Tony, I want to circle back around to how you said like it's the wrestling stigma. Isn't that kind of where we've been with wrestling cards to begin with?
It's all the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Like nobody, Rob, I'm sure we'll get to this eventually. Some of the, outside the wrestling bubble people that you've talked to that may show interest or disdain for wrestling cards. But, it's just been a uphill battle, like for the whole way. If you're, trying to get wrestling cards maybe into the mainstream or get other people to collect them, not necessarily from the monetary standpoint, but just from, hey, these should be on the same level as I say all the time, Pokemon, F1, all that, like, why are wrestling cards not up there with those? But Tony, turn it over to you if you got any comments on that, but you're up.
I'm up. Wow. Okay. My question's more about selling. I'm assuming everybody here sells on eBay, correct?
Uh-oh, Rob, this is going to be your wheelhouse. Here we go.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm with the new tax law that's gone into effect this year, shipping costs that are going up and up. Supplies cost money. So,
Yeah.
I mean, those are increasing in costs. How do you evolve your business and selling to keep up with the continuous cost of doing said business? And what advice would you give someone who's just now getting into, or maybe back into, online selling?
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, me myself, I was a power seller for a long time as a name Vela cards for many, many years, with tens of thousands of feedback. And I got out of it. I went and moved everything. I started specializing in a specific genre and specific type of card, and moved it all and just made a website and didn't tell anybody I left eBay. And they all found me there. And I was losing about 20 to 24% in fees and costs and everything on my eBay side. And then I ended up moving it to a website, and I started moving about 5, maybe 6%. I'm losing it in all my costs. But today, now it's like we are in 2022. Now we have this new tax law that goes into effect for everybody selling it. Whether it's a $600 item or $601 items, you're getting taxed on all this stuff. And I just feel like I'm getting taxed on both ends, and it's like having a bad illness of throwing up and shit in the same end. And I just don't know what kind of advice. What do you suggest?
Wow.
Well,
Rob, I already probably know what path you're going to go down, so I'm looking forward to hearing this, because you're the king of moving stuff.
well, I don't know about that. I appreciate it. But so I personally don't sell anything on eBay. I don't sell anything on eBay. I've probably made 3 sales on eBay in the last year. And like the last one was because it was an accident. I forgot I had the card up still. All of my deals, all of my transactions usually happen in the DMs on Instagram. They usually happen in the DMs on Instagram and at shows. So setting up at shows has been absolutely my gateway to being able to really like level up. But I know that I'm also very blessed to be in the Northeast. I'm here in Connecticut, where there's no shortage of shows, and there's no shortage of what seem like big shows. I'm 45 minutes from New York City. I'm 45 minutes from Springfield, Mass. I'm 2 hours from Boston, kind of thing. So there are shows all over the place. And having a podcast, as I think you guys probably know, it's kind of like a hobby hack. So it's a beautiful thing. It's like I talk about how I'm moving a lot towards vintage cards, and all of a sudden within the next week, I have a bunch of people DMing me being like, hey, I have these vintage cards, would you be interested in them? And it's not that they're giving me like deals, I'm not getting them for free, but they're at least coming to me. That's pretty cool. So, yeah. I think, Instagram and then setting up at shows has been my absolute wheelhouse for sure.
But you're still generating revenue through sales. Those sales have to go through something, whether it be Zilla, PayPal, all those companies now are all keeping track of these records coming through. Yeah. So it's like, how do you navigate to those waters to like, still make it profitable for yourself?
Yeah, that's I think the $1 million question, right? For me, if it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense.
Does that just go back to not being underwater on stuff like you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, for sure. And then there's been some stuff where I've had to move. I've moved stuff at a loss just because I'm like, well, I'm not going to play the game of waiting for the market to go back up. So, if I have a Hogan and I'm like, okay, I'm into it for $800. This person's willing to give me $500 for it, and you know what, maybe I will just move the Hogan, and take the $500, cut my losses, because there's really another card that I really feel confident about that I can get for $500, and I feel confident enough in myself that I can make up that $300 that I just lost on something else.
The dollar cost average, just keep things moving.
I've always believed in moving dead inventory for something more positive.
Yeah, definitely.
Houston, do you sell much? I don't even know if you sell very much.
Yeah, I was going to say, I definitely, when the question came up, I 100% thought I was going to be in the minority because as of last night, my eBay sales for the last like 90 days are at 5 cards, and I've probably sold 8 cards on eBay
Nice.
the last year. Yeah, I don't like eBay in general, and like I'll put a card up there just to see, like, you know, at an insanely high rate, just to kind of, you know, fish offers and see what happens. And I don't
Not
like
a $500,000 Jericho, do you?
We're going back on that. You're still talking about the Jericho?
Yeah, it's still up there.
Still up there.
Wow.
And so I don't like how they, you know, they don't really, you know, it's hard to get them to rule with the seller in a lot of cases. So probably 95 to 99% of my sales, I'd say, come from Twitter. And I would much rather list a card at $20 shipped on Twitter and sell it versus selling a card for $40 on eBay and then having $9 in fees taken out or whatever. And as far as the tax part of it goes, we actually had a discussion last night or the night before in the wrestling group chat I have on Twitter. And the research I done shows that this was from some personal like accountant in like Missouri somewhere. So I don't know how concrete it is, but according to them, the $600 tax 1099 comes into play on goods and service transactions only, and not friends and families.
Yeah, but you can only do so much friends and family before someone like PayPal goes, hey, you got too much of that going on.
Exactly. And that's kind of where, you know,
I've got an easy fix for that. Let's use every platform you can. Use crypto. Like, there's so many ways to circumvent that if you're trying to. I'm not advising to do that, but
yeah, and that's where, you know, I think people are going to have to really nail down what they want to sell versus what they maybe have, like I'm definitely selling pile, maybe I'll sell if I need to pile, and then there's no way I'm selling this pile, as opposed to just throwing everything out into the universe for sale. That's kind of what I would do in that situation, and maybe try to move some things, but also try to find that sweet spot of not getting shut down by PayPal or friends and families, but also kind of avoiding that tax. But I know, you know, you can sell one card and be well over that $600 threshold. So I think it's going to take a lot of strategic planning and scheming on, you know, big sellers' part.
Rob, I want to get your opinion on this because I think this is a good way to do it, and that is trading. Talk about how many awesome trades you've been able to make and how you've gone from this card to this card to this card just from trading. I know on the surface, people online, whether it's Instagram or Twitter, they might not understand, okay, wait a minute, I'm not seeing this person in person. How can I trade? Or, you know, how does trading online work? So I'm just gonna let you give the floor to you to talk about how you've leveled up just from trading.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that, man. I think that's being able to trade too is a big part of how we can avoid moving a lot of cash as well, right? Because if I know there's a really awesome $1,000 card that I have, or if someone has a Hogan Wrestling All-Stars card and they're like, it's raw, I want 800 for it, or whatever the current market rate is. I don't always have 800 laying around, right? So what I like to do is be able to give at least some trades. So my thing is I love being able to trade up into cards. So I love being able to take a card, add a little bit of cash, and then that way I can make it up to that card that I want to. That's my way of trading up. And don't get me wrong, I've traded down before. There's times where it's appropriate for me to trade down and whatnot, but very rarely have I ever made a trade of a card 1-to-1 and then that's it. You know,
Right.
I feel like there's always someone getting a more valuable card, and then there's always someone that might be paying a bit of a premium. So if I'm trading up, I know I'm going to be paying somewhat of a premium. So basically what I've done is I always have updated pictures in my phone of like my current inventory. You know, I'll take like a picture of my 6 top cards that are in the $100 range that I would move if an opportunity came. And then I'll take a picture of my top 6 cards that are maybe in the $1,000 range that I'd be willing to move. And then that way, I don't have to be home to take pictures for people. I can be at work and DM someone, or they could DM me, and I could be like, hey, listen, I saw you. I literally do this on a daily basis. I'm like, hey, I saw you just posted this $3,000 card. I'm really interested in it. I have 1,000 cash. I'm gonna text you over a picture of like 12 different cards. See if you could make a deal work for us, so that way I can get your $1,000 card. And then now they're really in the driver's seat, and they're like, oh, well, maybe I like that. What are the comps on that? What are the comps on that? And now I'm letting them play kind of deal maker, and then I can choose to refuse it or not. So it's a beautiful thing, and I always realize that sometimes if I'm trading up, I do have to pay a premium. So if I'm looking to get $1,000 card, I might have to give an $800 card and 400 cash. So I'm paying a $200 premium. Now, I don't always have to do that, luckily, because you could, lose a lot of money doing that. But the more I'm able to build these good, solid relationships with people, especially these higher end card accounts. And I know there aren't a ton of higher end card accounts in the wrestling community, right? Because like really the high end cards, people hold on to. If someone gets like the 5-timers club gold rock or Vince McMahon auto, they're holding on to that thing. Diamond hands. If people have an 82 wrestling all-stars, it's diamond hands. They're not getting rid of those things. But if there are the autos and everyone has their own kind of life situations that happen, so you never know who is willing to move a card that maybe 3 months ago they weren't willing to move.
Right.
And I just want to give flowers to Zhan real quick. You deserve your flowers on this, man. You did a podcast about a month ago, an episode on your individual podcast, and you talked about turning over your collection and feeling like, man, I'm the carrying cross guy. Like, what happens when you do get to that point where you're like, I think I want to get rid of my cross cards. I think I'm kind of over it, but you feel like I'm known as that though.
Yeah.
I'm going to be losing my identity if I get rid of these cards. That was like a really awesome point that you had made. So, but you never know when. So if I'm after carrying cross cards and I think that Zhan is not moving those cards, I'm still going to let him know, hey, every few months, hey, if you're ever interested in moving those, I might be interested. So it never hurts to slide into people's DMs, because you never know what kind of day they're having, or you never know if they are ready to move from those cards. So
good point.
Great points. Networking. Let's start there. In my opinion, Rob, like you said, I have made through wrestling cards and a little bit of the sports card guys, but mostly it's the wrestling card community. It's the best community there is. Sure, we have ups and downs with certain segments or stuff that happens, but the fact that I've made so many relationships with people that it's like you said, they'll reach out to me out of nowhere and say, hey, I've got this, I want to sell it, I need some money for this, I'm getting out of the hobby, here's my collection, will you buy it? I buy a lot of people's collections, whether it's a couple of higher end slab cards all the way up to like monster boxes full of junk wax era, which I can still turn over and then put that into bigger cards, which then puts me into eBay. And I guess to answer Tony's main question is, like, I just look at it as a cost of doing business. It sucks, it's more work, but I just I guess act accordingly. So raise my prices, make sure that I'm reporting I report everything on my taxes anyway that I'm selling, whether it's on Mercari, whether I actually sold something through goods and services, whether it's friends and family, anything that's not a trade. If it's a cash deal, I have a spreadsheet and I just put that all in with my regular income at the end of the year. So I'm reporting that stuff anyway. But one thing that I think is a positive, and I'm not always a glass half full, but when I see a little bit of positivity, I'm going for it. One thing I think is going to happen is a lot of these people who don't have any kind of business sense and haven't been keeping track of their taxes, maybe they're going to get hit by the IRS with a huge letter or something because they've been selling all these high-end basketball and baseball and football cards. They have been tracking their tax information. They're going to jump off. What that's going to do is people like me who are just nose to the grindstone, it's going to open up even more business for us, because all those people who don't want to play by the rules are going to get off the platform. And those of us who want to, you know, work our butts off on it, you know, slinging 99-cent cards and huge volume, we're going to be the ones benefiting from it. So in the long run, I view this actually as a positive.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, well said.
Interesting.
Speaking of positivity, I guess I'll ask my question. Positivity. What keeps you guys going every single day in the hobby? You know, we've got breaking news coming out of Fanatics taking over Tops. And then, you know, now WWE is going to be with Panini. So now is WWE back to where they started? We were so hyped that we were going to get WWE Prism. Now is Panini going to be going away? Are they going to be like the old Tops where they're kind of irrelevant? You know, some people are, I'm priced out. I can't buy these new AEW boxes. I can't afford $200. What happened to my $20 hobby boxes I used to buy when I was 10 years? You know, there's just so much complaining within the hobby. And I, like, every day I wake up, if I'm looking at cards, if I'm buying, if I'm selling, if I'm, you know, congratulating somebody on getting a Grail card that I see on Instagram or Twitter, like, there's just so much awesome stuff going on that even if something sucks, there's so much more fun to be had. So I just want to hear your guys' opinion on what keeps you going in the hobby, no matter what that is.
As the kind of new guy into it, I'll go first because I can definitely answer that in 2 words, and the 2 words are what keeps me going is wrestling cards. From 2011, when I got into the hobby, you know, with the stick and ball sports, up until, you know, 4 or 5 months ago, I never had a card, never owned a card. I'm a Texas Rangers fan, and I had so many cool cards of the Texas Rangers, and I was just like, oh man, that's a, you know, sweet card, you know, put it up on the shelf so when people come over, they could see it and stuff like that. But in wrestling cards, I actually feel like I have something. And
Yes.
you know, even with my MJF signed All In card, and I just look at that card and I'm just like, man, like I love that card. And even though it's just, you know, to some people it's just a square piece of cardboard with somebody's face on it, when I look at that card, I'm just like, man, I actually have something. Like, and I never felt that way about the stick and ball sports. And so seeing other people on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram who are in the wrestling cards as well, whether it be, you know, Flair rookie, or, you know, just a Cody Rhodes signed card, when I see people post about these cards, you can just kind of feel it through the post that they actually have something and they actually love what they have. And it's not that they just pulled a card that 6 million other people have and that you can go on, which there's nothing, obviously, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with loving, you know, a $2 card or anything like that. But I just love what the wrestling card community has. And, you know, the biggest thing I see is obviously the debate on what's a rookie card and what's not. Even that isn't nowhere near as bad of debate as why is Wander Franco's cards way more expensive than like Willie Mays cards or something like that, you know? And so just wrestling cards are what keeps me going. And I love everything about them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing the stories about the card. And I'm kind of with you. Like, when it comes down to, you know, raising capital to buy something you want, I always am going to, all right, LeBron, you're out of here. Jordan, you're gone. Brady, you're probably gone too. All right, come on, Flair and Hogan. You know, that's what it's always that way.
But he keeps all those damn Bills cards.
Actually, those have been thinning out too. I've got some pretty big ones I've kept, and you know, those have a certain attachment to me. Like he said, I look at it and I'm like, man, this rules. But it's like, you know, a handful of cards. It's not just like an overwhelming quantity. So, but yeah, the attachment and stories behind cards, the stuff that I see from the wrestling card community, like, you know, you look at me, I'm in the background of the shot of this WrestleMania, you know, stuff like that. Like, I just think that stuff's amazing. And I don't really see that as much in sports cards. It's all like, you know, what's up, what's down, you know, what controversy is here today. So it's, you know, that's one thing I like about the wrestling card community.
Tony, you want to go?
Oh no, go right ahead, Mr. Sports Card Therapist.
Tony's debating whether he even wants to comment.
I am debating if I even want to comment, but no, I do have an answer. But go ahead, sir.
So, it sounds so cliche. It really does. But the thing that truly keeps me going, aside from the cardboard, because even the cardboard, I feel like at times you can kind of get burnt out on. It's really a combination of the cardboard and then the people. It's like my inner circle of people, that we have, whether if it's a group text going, that we're just every single day. And I find myself almost more emotionally invested in what some of my closest friends are getting than what I'm getting, and I genuinely get so happy when they get a big card. I'm like, yes, I'm going nuts for them. I'm like, yes, that's awesome. And it's just a great time, and it's like, I feel like even though there's so many of us out there really are so few of us out there. When you think about, like friends and family, I can only think of my really couple closest friends in the hobby that would even give a crap how obsessed I am with this hobby. And it's an obsession. I'm just like, every day I'm thinking about it. Every day I'm on eBay, I'm searching sites, I'm on Instagram, and there's only a couple people that you could talk to that truly can identify with it. So it's like, when I feel like I'm getting burnt out on the cardboard, my circle's there. And when I feel like I'm getting burnt out in my circle, the cardboard's there. So
Houston, I don't know if you were following it. Rob, I don't know if you were following it, but me and Tony were following it when there was like a race to see who could finish the WCW autograph sets. And like Jamie was chasing it and Wes was chasing it, and then who was going to get it first and who was going to get one of the elusive. So, even though I don't collect those, I think they're awesome. It's just, I've got other things I want. It was fun, like you said, to see all of these cards just point, who's going to get the complete set first, as rare of those are. So yeah, I love celebrating other people's collections. And every time Tony posts something with Dexter Lumis, I'm like, yes. And everybody else is like, oh, that's a $2 card, or that's, nobody, Dexter Lumis doesn't even wrestle. And I'm like, I don't care. Tony got another one.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
That watching Wes and Jamie go at it was great. It's like, to me, it reminded me, it's like the wrestling trading card version of watching Sosa McGuire going at it. It's just,
that's
so
exactly what it was.
It was so much fun to watch. And so I'm glad that both got that completed just like that. And Jamie's on another fire now. He's going after all wrestling, autograph cards that are on card, So now he's after the 2005 Topps, autograph set now of all those ones. And just beautiful watching his stuff. So I have fun watching people, collect that stuff. But for me, on my answer,
I know you're holding out, but
no, for me, it's mostly, I've been, since I started doing my own podcast thing, it's how you and I met, Zhan. It's kind of grown to the point now where I've kind of realized that, I have a PC, I collect Kurt Angle, I collect Dexter Lumis stuff. But for me, and I've been saying this more and more lately on both our podcasts, individual ones, and other places, I'm more interested in and have gotten a big love of collecting information. And that's what WTC is really kind of getting really back into, like the early days of, like, this is my 20th anniversary this year of WTC this year. It'll be the 20th anniversary.
Wow.
So December this year will be 20 years. And I'm like, probably more so than then, where back then it was like, I can't find information, I'm going to build something. And I built a website, blah, blah, blah. And it was a fun adventure for that. I'm having more fun now because I have a small little PC. I don't have to worry about collecting so much stuff. I have the Chucksters of the world. I have the Pauls from the Price Guide, and I have Armands and other guys who submit information to me, reliable source people. I get a big thrill out of what keeps me going is getting the information and finding new things to add to the website to make it more like, this is the place to go to get your information about wrestling cards. I've turned a website into just being a checklist site with, images are coming. I'm branding it. I'm branding WTC now. You see a guy wearing your T-shirt on AEW.
That was cool. That was cool.
Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty cool. And like the whole time, I was like, look, I know you showed it 20 times already, honey. Stop it. It's so cool though.
Now, do you know who that guy is?
I'm going to have him on as a guest. I know who he is. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, but it's just, I get burned out. And as I've talked to you before privately, Zhan, I get anxiety and I get overwhelmed with too much stuff. So when I go to my storage, it's really hard for me to go through it and go, oh, I have this. Just leave it all. I don't care anymore. Just leave it all. Just put it back in the storage unit. So like having you around, when we're doing like the storage unit, sale that one night it made it easy for me. I had no sense of being overwhelmed at all, which was great. So I guess I have that, which is positive, is finding people like Zhan and other people that I have connected with over this past year and a half that make this hobby fun for me again for the first time in a long time. And I'm enjoying gathering information and just gathering and making WTC the best it can possibly be.
You just brought up a good point that I want to ask everyone here, because we all do it. Tony, you just mentioned something that's hobby related, but it's not cardboard, like Rob said. We all create content. How has content creation been something for you that's a hobby within a hobby? I like to say that on all the shows, because that's kind of what it's become for me. Like Tony said, there time to time it does get frustrating. I'm sure you guys can relate to that, but at the same time, it's networking. It's a creative outlet for me sometimes. So has that been a Brett McGrath hobby hack? Has this been a hobby hack for you guys and a hobby within a hobby?
Yeah, and I was actually going to answer. That's what my answer was going to be at first when you asked how do you keep from getting burnt out, was the podcast and everything just keeps everything so fresh and incredible. But in my head, I was like, I think most of the listeners probably don't have their own podcast, so they probably can't identify with that. Yeah. So I probably won't say that. But but yeah, the podcast has been the absolute most life-changing thing for me in terms of the hobby, without a doubt. If it was not for the podcast, I would not have met the people I've met, and if it wasn't for the people, I wouldn't have the collection I have. That's just it's what it comes down to. I truly owe it all to, I think, my hard work and dedication to the podcast, which then kind of turns into something else. And it's tough because I think you guys can probably identify there is not a day that passes where the podcast is not on my mind, whether if it's an upcoming topic, whether if it's how I thought yesterday's show really sucked and I probably shouldn't have even released it, because I have people that message me now and they're like, yo, that guest you had on, that guy sucked. Don't ever have that guy on again. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of felt like that too. Like,
it's probably me. It's probably when I was on your show. They're like, oh, the wrestling card guy, get him out of there.
No, but it's
there you go.
But it just the having the podcast has been it's been absolutely transformed me in this hobby. So it's been great.
Houston?
Yeah, I can, mine is a little bit more guest oriented, and I do depend on the independent wrestlers to give me their time, and so it's a little bit harder to navigate. But the independent wrestlers that I have had on, some of them have been on, like AEW Dark, but they do way more independent stuff, and most people wouldn't even probably know who they are unless they had been to a show they had been to, all the way up into, guys that are wrestling and doing absolutely like one of a kind stuff with like EC3 and Strowman. But from those guys all the way down to the ones that, nobody would know of unless they've been to a show, they have actually supported me in Chasin the Graph more than some of my own friends and family have.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's just so, I guess, humbling for me because I'm just appreciative that these guys are giving me, 10, 20, 30 minutes of their time when they have so much other stuff going on. But just being on the receiving end of them being like, hey, I really appreciate you giving me a platform to tell my story. No one's done that before. If you want to come to a show that I'm at near you, just let me know and I'll leave you a comp ticket for you and your wife, or I'm going to retweet this for you so my audience sees it, or you know, if you want this guest on your show, I can, you know, try to edge them your way. And it's just some of my own closest friends and family haven't done that. So that definitely gives me that drive. And just like that, you know, somebody that doesn't know me and has never met me in person wants me to succeed, then I really need to keep moving forward with this.
Right. Wow. I think we're going to end it there. What a great topic that was. Thank you guys for coming on the show today. Hopefully there's a lot of information that we've talked about today that can help people just level up their collection, start their collection, get rid of those stick and ball cards and jump into the squared circle cards, whatever it is. I'm just hoping that, you know, people are grabbing some value from what we've all talked about today. So we'll start with you, Rob. Let everybody know where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, sports card therapist, 3 words, all one word, however it is you do it. You can definitely find me. And yeah, again, guys, thank you very much for having me on. This was great. This was a blast. Any chance I can talk wrestling cards, I definitely jump at it. And you guys are the best in the game at it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we let Houston take this, anybody who hasn't listened to Rob's podcast, go check it out. And one thing I really want to stress is I get a lot of people complimenting me about my, you know, like I'll call them flips, but you know, just taking a monster box that was $10 or $15 at the LCS full of junk wax and turning that into an 82-83 All-Stars complete set. If you guys want more stuff on how to do that, listen to Rob's podcast because he has become legendary at doing this, especially through trades. Like, it's amazing. Houston, you're up.
Chasin the Graph on Twitter, got the red logo with the pin, and Chasin the Graph on Facebook. Only 5 followers away on Facebook from 1,600. And I got an interview coming up with a gentleman named J.R. Miller. He actually trained with Cody Rhodes and QT at the Nightmare Factory, and he was on AEW Dark Elevation 2 weeks ago, and he's actually going to be on AEW Dark twice coming up. So once he gets those 2 shows out of the way, we're gonna rock out a interview and give him a platform to tell his story.
Awesome. And I should have mentioned this earlier. Rob, Houston, all your guys' information will be in the show notes. If you guys need easy links to find their podcast and the YouTube channel, they will be below. Tony, you're up.
Boy, I have nothing.
WTC, Wrestling Trading. Okay, I'll take it. WrestlingTradingCards.com. Most reliable source of wrestling cards the past 20 years. Everything is on there.
Everything I have is on WrestlingTradingCards.com. So every link to any type of social media is on there. So I'm just constantly plugging away at it. I'm going through a little bit of by the time we're recording this right now, I'm going through a little bit of again, a little bit overwhelming like that. Been trying to tackle a couple of checklists that I'm trying to get going here. And it's just had a freak out last night and then try to get back to it this morning. Had a freak out again this morning about it. I'm like,
it's a lot.
All right, it's got to walk away. So I'm just I'm a one-man operation on the back end, handling all the back end stuff. So sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming doing that, and then trying to get my booking business going, and trying to get the store open here in Phoenix. It's just sometimes I feel like I'm spreading myself too thin, but eventually I get myself back up and going. But everything can be found on WrestlingTradingCards.com.
And at Zhan Morning, Wrestling with Cards on YouTube, Wrestling with Cards podcast, Worlds Collide podcast. Obviously, you guys are listening to this now. Please subscribe, tell a friend about the show, and leave us a review if you dig this. Share it with somebody that's collecting sports cards or a family member that thinks that, they may get some information out of this. Share it with a wrestling fan. I always say this. We've got to get more wrestling fans buying the trading cards. They're buying the action figures. They're buying the t-shirts. They got to start buying the cards. It's the only way we're going to grow this hobby. It's
the best of both worlds, man. You can get figures with cards inside of it.
With the cards. There you go. All right, you guys. Thank you for listening. Rob, Houston, thank you for coming on. We'll see you.